I'm Eleanor Bennett, 67 years old, and never in my life did I expect my own daughter would try to poison me. At what should have been a joyous family dinner celebrating Kathleen's promotion, I noticed something wasn't right with my drink. The slight discoloration, Kathleen's eager eyes watching me, that smirk she couldn't quite hide. Mother's intuition kicked in immediately. When she turned away, I smoothly switched my glass with her husband Marcus's. What happened next changed our family forever. If you're watching from your home right now, hit subscribe and join me for a story about betrayal, quick thinking, and how I finally taught my entitled daughter the lesson she desperately needed. Family is supposed to be your foundation, your safe harbor in life's storms. At least that's what I always believed as I built mine. After losing my husband Robert to cancer 8 years ago, my 2 children became my world, though in very different ways. I've always been good with money, a natural talent that served me well in my 40-year career in real estate. I started small, buying a duplex in my 30s, then gradually expanded until I owned several valuable properties across town. While some of my friends struggled with retirement, I was fortunate to have built substantial wealth through careful investments and a keen eye for promising properties. Kathleen, my 43-year-old daughter, has always been headstrong. Even as a child, she wanted what she wanted when she wanted it. Unlike her brother Gregory, who worked hard for everything he achieved, Kathleen expected things to fall into her lap. I love both my children equally, but I can't deny they've taken very different paths in life. 5 years ago, when Kathleen and her husband Marcus were struggling to buy their first home, I stepped in. The housing market was brutal, and despite Marcus's decent job as an accountant, they kept getting outbid. After watching their disappointment month after month, I made them an offer. I would purchase the beautiful 4-bedroom colonial they had their hearts set on, and they could make monthly payments to me instead of a bank. No down payment required and interest at half the going rate. "Mom, are you serious?" Kathleen had asked, tears in her eyes. "That's too generous." "That's what family does," I'd responded, truly believing I was helping them build their future. At first, they were grateful, sending thank you cards and inviting me over for dinner regularly. Marcus, particularly, seemed genuinely appreciative, often helping me with home repairs or technology issues. But over time, something shifted with Kathleen. The mortgage payments started coming late, sometimes with flimsy excuses about forgetting, or the check being in the mail. When I gently reminded her, she'd get defensive, as if I was being unreasonable for expecting them to honor our agreement. "You don't need the money anyway, Mom," she'd say dismissively. "Your accounts are bursting at the seams while we're struggling with daycare costs." That stung. Yes, I was financially comfortable, but I'd worked hard for every penny. The arrangement wasn't about the money, it was about responsibility and teaching my daughter to stand on her own feet. My son Gregory took a completely different approach to life. He and his wife Pamela saved for years to afford their modest starter home. When I offered similar help, he politely declined, saying they wanted to do it themselves. I respected that tremendously, though I did help in other ways. Babysitting their children, contributing to college funds, practical support that didn't undermine their independence. This difference in attitude created an uncomfortable dynamic. Kathleen began making snippy comments about Gregory being the golden child, and me playing favorites. Nothing could be further from the truth, but Kathleen had constructed this narrative that suited her worldview. The tension came to a head 3 months ago when I suggested that perhaps it was time to transfer the house into their names, with a formal mortgage agreement through a bank. "Are you kicking us out?" Kathleen had practically shrieked over the phone. "Of course not," I'd explained patiently. "I'm trying to help you establish credit and true ownership. You're successful now. This would be a positive step." Kathleen had recently received a significant promotion at her marketing firm, becoming director of client relations. Her salary had nearly doubled and Marcus was doing well too. They could easily afford a conventional mortgage now, but instead of seeing my suggestion as confidence in their financial stability, Kathleen viewed it as abandonment. "You've always liked Gregory better," she'd snapped before hanging up. We hadn't spoken for nearly 2 weeks after that call. When she finally reached out to invite me to a family dinner celebrating her promotion, I was relieved. Perhaps this was her way of extending an olive branch. Gregory and Pamela would be there with their children, and I looked forward to having everyone together again. The evening of the dinner, I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that Robert always said brought out my eyes. I brought an expensive bottle of champagne and a heartfelt card congratulating Kathleen on her achievement. Despite our recent friction, I was genuinely proud of her professional success and hoped this evening would reset our relationship. Kathleen and Marcus's home was beautiful, I had to admit. The colonial architecture with its classic lines and spacious rooms had been well worth the investment. They decorated tastefully, with family photos adorning the walls and fresh flowers on the entryway table. Looking around, I felt a moment of satisfaction knowing I'd helped make this possible for them. As I stepped through the door, Kathleen greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mom, you're right on time as always," she said, taking the champagne. "Everyone's in the living room." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I brushed it aside. This was a celebration after all. I was determined to make it a pleasant evening for everyone. Little did I know, my daughter had very different plans for how this night would unfold. When I arrived at Kathleen and Marcus's house that evening, everything looked picture-perfect. The colonial home gleamed under tasteful landscape lighting, and through the windows, I could see the warm glow of their dining room chandelier. My grandson Tyler spotted me first as I walked up the path, his 8-year-old face breaking into a genuine smile as he pressed his nose against the window. "Grandma's here," he shouted, and moments later the front door swung open. "Mother, welcome," Kathleen said, air-kissing my cheek. She wore an elegant black dress that must have cost a fortune, another symbol of her new executive status. "Everyone's inside already." The living room was alive with conversation when I entered. Gregory rose immediately to give me a proper hug, his wife Pamela waving from where she sat helping their 6-year-old daughter Emma with a puzzle. Marcus approached with a warm smile and a gentle squeeze of my shoulder. "Eleanor, great to see you," he said sincerely. "Can I take your coat?" I handed it over, noting how Marcus always made an effort to make me feel welcome, unlike my daughter who was already drifting back toward the kitchen, seemingly preoccupied with hosting duties. "Kathleen, the house looks lovely," I called after her, determined to start on a positive note. "You've done wonders with the dining room." She turned, momentarily surprised by the compliment. "Thanks, Mom. The new table just came last week. For $1,000, but worth every penny, don't you think?" The subtle dig about money wasn't lost on me, but I simply nodded appreciatively. For $1,000 for a table when they were still struggling to make mortgage payments to me? I kept that thought to myself. The first half hour passed pleasantly enough with small talk and catching up. Emma showed me her school art project, Tyler talked excitedly about his baseball team, and Gregory filled me in on his recent promotion at the engineering firm. "Nothing as fancy as director of client relations," he joked, glancing at his sister. "But it comes with better health insurance, so Pamela's happy." "Health insurance doesn't buy Gucci," Kathleen replied with a tight smile, and an uncomfortable silence followed. "Dinner's almost ready," Marcus announced, smoothly changing the subject. "I should check on the roast." "I'll handle the drinks," Kathleen interjected quickly. "Mom, white wine still your preference?" "Yes, thank you," I replied, noticing how she'd emphasized handling the drinks herself. From my seat in the living room, I had a partial view into the kitchen. Something made me watch Kathleen carefully as she prepared the drinks. Marcus was focused on the oven, his back turned, while Kathleen methodically arranged glasses on a serving tray. I saw her reach into her pocket and quickly drop something into one of the wine glasses before filling it. My heart skipped a beat. Had I really seen what I thought I saw? Surely my own daughter wouldn't. "Drinks are served," Kathleen announced brightly, carrying the tray into the living room. She distributed glasses to everyone, saving one specific glass for me. "Here you go, Mom. A spécial pour you." As she handed me the glass, I noticed it had a barely perceptible cloudy quality compared to the others, and when I pretended to take a small sip, there was a faint bitter scent beneath the wine's bouquet. "Let's toast to Kathleen's success," Marcus suggested, raising his glass. Everyone lifted their drinks enthusiastically, but I only pretended to sip mine. Kathleen's eyes were fixed on me, an expectant gleam in them that made my stomach turn. Whatever she had put in my drink, she was waiting for it to take effect. Actually, Would you mind if I used the restroom quickly before dinner? I asked, setting my glass down on the side table. Of course, Mom. You know where it is, Kathleen replied, a flash of annoyance crossing her features. In the hallway bathroom, I leaned against the sink, processing what was happening. My own daughter had tampered with my drink. But why? What had she put in it? My mind raced through possibilities. Was it something to make me ill? Something to make me seem drunk and embarrass me in front of the family? Either way, I couldn't confront her without proof and risk ruining the entire evening. I needed to be strategic. When I returned to the living room, I noticed Marcus had set his barely touched wine down while helping Tyler with something. Without drawing attention, I smoothly switched our glasses as I passed by his seat. Dinner's ready, Kathleen called from the dining room. Everyone come sit down. The table was beautifully set with the expensive new dining set, candles flickering in the center. Kathleen had assigned seating, placing me directly across from her where she could watch me. Marcus sat to her right, already reaching for what he thought was his wine glass. Actually, my tampered one. Before we eat, Kathleen said, raising her glass again, I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with me tonight. Especially you, Mom. Since I know how busy you are managing all your properties and keeping tabs on everyone's finances. The passive-aggressive barb wasn't subtle, but I smiled graciously. I wouldn't miss celebrating your success, Kathleen. You've worked hard for this promotion. Marcus took a large swallow of the wine, and I watched Kathleen's eyes flick to me expectantly when I pretended to do the same. Whatever she'd planned, she was eager to see it unfold. The dinner proceeded with Kathleen dominating the conversation, detailing her new responsibilities and the company perks that came with her promotion. Halfway through the main course, I noticed Marcus shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He wiped his brow, which had begun to perspire noticeably. Are you feeling all right, honey? Kathleen asked him, genuinely concerned. Just a little warm, he mumbled, loosening his tie. And my stomach feels off suddenly. Kathleen frowned, looking between Marcus and me with growing confusion. I was eating calmly, showing no signs of discomfort, while her husband was increasingly distressed. Excuse me, Marcus said abruptly, pushing back from the table. I need to use the bathroom. As he hurried away, Kathleen's eyes narrowed at me suspiciously. I met her gaze evenly, taking another pretend sip from my glass. Delicious wine, I commented. A special occasion bottle? Her face flushed, and I knew in that moment that she realized what I'd done. The look of thwarted malice that flashed across her features confirmed everything. Marcus returned 10 minutes later looking pale, avoiding everyone's concerned glances. Throughout the remainder of dinner, he excused himself twice more, each time returning looking more uncomfortable and slightly angry. Maybe we should skip dessert, Gregory suggested, sensing the growing tension. The kids have school tomorrow anyway. Nonsense, Kathleen insisted, though her celebratory mood had clearly evaporated. I made tiramisu. Actually, Marcus interrupted, his voice strained. I'm really not feeling well. I think it might be best if we wrap up. The evening dissolved awkwardly from there. As everyone prepared to leave, I found myself alone with Kathleen in the kitchen as I helped clear plates. I know what you did, she hissed, keeping her voice low. You switched the glasses. I set down the stack of dishes and looked my daughter directly in the eyes. And I know what you did too, Kathleen. The question is, why would a daughter do that to her mother? She didn't answer, but her cheeks burned red with anger and embarrassment. Whatever was in that drink, I continued calmly, your husband has been suffering the effects all evening. What was it supposed to do to me, Kathleen? Make me sick? Humiliate me? You don't understand anything, she snapped. You never have. Before I could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face grim. Everyone's leaving, he said flatly. I'll see them out. The drive home that night was one of the longest of my life. The realization that my own daughter had tried to drug me at a family dinner settled like a cold stone in my chest. All these years I tried to help her, support her, love her unconditionally. And this was how she repaid me. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hurt had crystallized into something harder resolve. It was time Kathleen learned that actions have consequences, even at 43 years old. The elegant dining room had become a theater of discomfort. Marcus shifted in his seat, his complexion alternating between flushed and pallid as whatever Kathleen had put in my drink worked its way through his system. For her part, my daughter kept shooting confused glances between Marcus and me, her celebratory evening clearly not going according to plan. "The roast is delicious," I commented pleasantly, cutting another bite with deliberate calmness. "Did you use a new recipe, Kathleen?" She barely acknowledged the question, her attention fixed on Marcus as he loosened his collar and took shallow breaths. "Honey, are you sure you're okay?" she asked him, genuine concern mixing with growing suspicion as she glanced at my still composed demeanor. "Just not feeling right," Marcus muttered, pushing potatoes around his plate without eating. "Excuse me again." He rose abruptly, nearly knocking over his water glass in his haste to leave the table. This was his third trip to the bathroom in less than 40 minutes. The children had started to notice, with Tyler whispering something to his father that made Gregory shake his head in response. "Is Uncle Marcus sick?" Emma asked innocently. "I think something didn't agree with him," Pamela replied diplomatically, giving Kathleen a sympathetic look. I caught Kathleen staring at me with naked accusation in her eyes. The realization had clearly dawned that I'd somehow avoided her trap. I met her gaze steadily, taking a deliberate sip of my untampered wine. "So tell us more about your new role, Kathleen," I prompted, maintaining the facade of a proud mother. "Will you be traveling more?" Kathleen's jaw tightened. "Yes, some international travel. Paris next month for a client meeting." "How wonderful," I replied. "Your father would have been so proud to see how far you've come." The mention of Robert seemed to throw her off balance. She blinked rapidly, conflicting emotions crossing her face. Marcus returned, moving gingerly to his seat. His eyes now held not just discomfort but dawning anger. He leaned close to Kathleen, whispering something that made her flinch and pull away. Gregory, always perceptive, cleared his throat. "It's getting late, and the kids have school tomorrow. Maybe we should call it a night." "But I made tiramisu," Kathleen protested weakly, her voice lacking conviction. "Maybe you could pack some for us to take home," Pamela suggested kindly. The dinner party began its awkward dissolution. As everyone moved from the dining room, I offered to help clear the table, deliberately creating an opportunity to speak with Kathleen alone. In the kitchen, away from the others, I methodically scraped leftovers into containers while Kathleen aggressively loaded the dishwasher, slamming plates with barely contained fury. "What did you do?" she finally hissed, keeping her voice low. "I believe the better question is what did you do, Kathleen?" I replied evenly. "To my drink." Her eyes widened fractionally before narrowing. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I saw you put something in my wine glass," I stated simply. "I'm not a fool, Kathleen. I raised you. I know when you're up to something." "You're imagining things," she snapped, but her flushed cheeks betrayed her. "Am I? Then why is Marcus the one running to the bathroom every 10 minutes while I'm feeling perfectly fine?" Her hand stilled on the plate she was rinsing. "You switched the glasses." It wasn't a question, but a realization spoken aloud. "What was it, Kathleen? Laxatives? Something to make me look foolish in front of everyone? To humiliate your own mother at a family dinner?" She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. "Whatever your grievance with me, this crossed a line," I continued, keeping my voice level despite the hurt and anger churning inside me. "I've done nothing but support you your entire life." "Support me?" she scoffed quietly. "You mean control me? Keep me dependent on you financially? Make sure I never forget who really owns our home?" Before I could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face drawn with discomfort and growing suspicion. "Kathleen, can I talk to you?" His voice was tight with controlled anger. "We're saying goodbye to everyone," she replied dismissively. "Now, Kathleen." His tone left no room for argument. As she followed him out, I heard the low murmur of their heated exchange in the hallway. Words like, "Did you?" and "How could you?" drifted back to me, confirming that Marcus was putting the pieces together. Gregory found me alone in the kitchen moments later. "Everything okay, Mom? You seem tense." I forced a smile. "Just tired, sweetheart. It's been an eventful evening." He studied me with the perceptive gaze he'd inherited from his father. Did something happen with Kathleen? She and Marcus are having some kind of argument in the bedroom. Just a misunderstanding, I replied, unwilling to burden him with the ugly truth. You should get Pamela and the kids home. It's late. As I gathered my purse and coat, Kathleen emerged from the hallway, her makeup slightly smudged as though she'd been crying. Marcus stood further back, his expression unreadable. Thank you for coming, everyone, she said mechanically. Mom, drive safely. The coolness in her voice told me everything.
No hug. No worms.
Just a daughter who had been caught trying to humiliate her mother, and was angry about the backfire. I kissed my grandchildren goodbye, embraced Gregory and Pamela, and nodded politely to Marcus, who couldn't quite meet my eyes. Congratulations again on your promotion, Kathleen, I said as I stepped out the door. I'm very proud of your professional achievements. The emphasis on professional wasn't lost on her. Her lips pressed into a thin line as she closed the door behind me without another word. Driving home alone, the full weight of the evening settled over me. The beautiful colonial house I'd bought to give my daughter and her family security had become the setting for a petty, hurtful attempt to embarrass me. The daughter I'd supported through college, career changes, and financial struggles had slipped something into my drink out of spite. The hurt was profound, but as I pulled into my driveway, another emotion began to overshadow it. Resolve. I had always been too indulgent with Kathleen, making excuses for her behavior and rescuing her from consequences. Perhaps that had been my mistake all along. As I unlocked my front door, I made a decision. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, Kathleen would learn that actions have consequences, and that her mother was not the pushover she apparently thought I was. I slept fitfully that night, replaying the dinner scene in my mind. By morning, my path was clear. After a strong cup of coffee, I sat down at my computer and logged into my banking portal. It was time for some long overdue changes. Morning sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows as I sat at the table, nursing my second cup of coffee. Sleep had been elusive, my mind replaying the previous evening's events in painful detail. The look on Kathleen's face when she realized I'd switched the glasses. The growing realization that my own daughter had tried to drug and humiliate me at what should have been a joyous family celebration. I'd spent most of the night cycling through emotions: hurt, betrayal, anger, and finally, as dawn broke, a calm resolve. For years, I'd enabled Kathleen's entitled behavior, making excuses and smoothing over the consequences. The mortgage arrangement was just the most significant example of a pattern that stretched back to her childhood. The elegant china teacup in my hands had been a gift from Robert on our 30th anniversary. What would he have thought about last night? He'd always been the stricter parent, more willing to let the children face the natural consequences of their actions. Perhaps if he'd lived, Kathleen wouldn't have become so entitled. Enough, I murmured to myself, setting down the cup with newfound determination. It was time for action. At my desk, I powered up my computer and navigated to my banking portal. The mortgage payment for Kathleen and Marcus's house was set up as an automatic transfer from their joint account to mine on the first of each month. For nearly 5 years, I'd watched these payments come in, sometimes on time, often late, occasionally requiring gentle or not so gentle reminders. With a few clicks, I found the automatic payment arrangement and hovered over the cancel button. Was I really going to do this? It was a drastic step that would undoubtedly cause a massive rift. But then again, hadn't Kathleen already created that rift when she slipped something into my drink? I clicked cancel and confirmed my choice. A notification appeared. Automatic payment arrangement for account number 4528792 has been successfully canceled. The account holder will be notified of this change. My heart raced as I realized what I'd just done. Kathleen and Marcus would receive an email notification immediately. I took a deep breath and moved to the next phase of my plan. I dialed my bank's customer service number, navigating through the automated system until I reached a representative. Good morning, this is Melissa. How may I help you today? Good morning, Melissa. This is Eleanor Bennett. I need to discuss a mortgage arrangement I have with my daughter and son-in-law. For the next 20 minutes, I explained the situation, minus the poison drink detail, and confirmed that the property was legally in my name. with Kathleen and Marcus making payments directly to me rather than through an official mortgage. I want to make sure they understand that the payment arrangement has been canceled, I explained. Will they receive a formal notification? Yes, Mrs. Bennett. An email has already been sent to the account holders, and a physical letter will follow within 3 to 5 business days. Thank you, Melissa. That's exactly what I needed to know. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, emotions swirling. Had I gone too far? Or not far enough? The house was legally mine. I could technically evict them if I wanted to, but that wasn't my goal. I wanted to teach a lesson, not destroy their lives. I didn't have to wait long for the reaction. At precisely 10:17 a.m., my phone rang, Kathleen's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring twice more before answering with a calm, "Hello, Kathleen. What the hell do you think you're doing?" Her voice was shrill, nearly hysterical. "We just got an email saying our payment arrangement has been canceled." "Yes, I made that change this morning," I replied evenly. "Without talking to us? Without any warning? Are you trying to ruin us financially? I think we need to have a conversation about the house and our arrangement, Kathleen. Especially after what happened last night." There was a momentary pause on the line. "What are you talking about?" "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. The substance you put in my wine glass at dinner." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know what you think you saw." "I don't think, Kathleen. I know. I watched you do it. That's why I switched glasses with Marcus when you weren't looking." The silence that followed was deafening. I could almost hear the calculations running through her mind: deny, minimize, deflect. "It was just a harmless prank," she finally said, her voice smaller. "A little bit of laxative. It wouldn't have hurt you." The casual admission stunned me despite my certainty. A harmless prank? To make your 67-year-old mother have an accident at the dinner table in front of the entire family? To humiliate me during what should have been a celebration of your success? "You're blowing this way out of proportion," she deflected. "It wasn't that serious." "It was serious enough that Marcus was miserable all evening. Serious enough that you deliberately tried to humiliate me. Tell me, Kathleen, how would you have felt if I'd done the same to you?" She didn't answer. "I've decided it's time for our arrangement to change," I continued. "The house is legally in my name. I've canceled the payment arrangement because I believe we need to discuss transferring the property properly, with a formal mortgage through a bank." "So you are trying to take our house away?" Her voice rose again. "After all the payments we've made?"
No, Kathleen.
"I'm trying to make you take responsibility. The payments you've made over 5 years wouldn't even cover half the down payment on that house in today's market. I've subsidized your lifestyle while you've been increasingly disrespectful and entitled. This is insane. I can't believe you're doing this over a stupid joke. Drugging someone without their knowledge isn't a joke, Kathleen. It's assault." The word hung in the air between us. In the background, I heard a door open and Marcus's voice asking what was happening. "Your mother canceled our mortgage payments," Kathleen said to him, covering the mouthpiece partially but not enough. "She's threatening to take the house because of what happened last night." "What?" "Let me talk to her," Marcus said, his voice growing closer. "Eleanor." His voice was tense but controlled. "What's going on?" "I've canceled the automatic payment arrangement for the house, Marcus. After what happened last night, I believe we need to reconsider our financial relationship." "What happened last?" "Wait, are you talking about me getting sick? What does that have to do with our house?" I realized with a start that Kathleen hadn't told him the truth. "Marcus, did Kathleen explain why you were ill last night?" "She said it must have been something I ate earlier." "Put me on speakerphone, please, Marcus." There was a pause, then the quality of the audio changed slightly. "You're on speaker," he confirmed. "Kathleen, would you like to tell Marcus why he was running to the bathroom all evening, or shall I?" "Mom, this is ridiculous," Kathleen started. "Your wife put laxatives in a drink she intended for me," I stated clearly. "I saw her do it and switched our glasses when she wasn't looking. That's why you were sick, Marcus, not because of something you ate earlier." The silence that followed was profound. "Kathleen." Marcus's voice was quiet, disbelieving. "Is that true?" "It was just supposed to be a little joke," she said weakly. Mom's blowing it completely out of proportion. You drugged a drink for your mother? His voice rose with each word. And I drank it instead? And you let me believe I was just sick. I didn't know how to tell you, she whispered. I can't believe this, Marcus said, his voice strained. Eleanor, I had no idea. I swear. I believe you, Marcus, I replied. But this incident has made me realize that our current arrangement isn't working. The lack of respect, the missed payments, and now this. It's time for a change. Are you evicting us? He asked directly. No, that's not my intention. But I am considering transferring the house into your names with a proper mortgage through a bank, as I suggested months ago. You're both making good money now. It's time to stand on your own feet financially. So you are punishing us, Kathleen interjected.
I'm establishing boundaries, Kathleen.
Something I should have done long ago. We'll discuss this further when emotions aren't so high. For now, know that I won't be accepting any more direct payments from you. We'll work with the bank to arrange a proper mortgage, or you can look for another housing situation if you prefer. Mom, you can't. I can, Kathleen. The house is in my name. But I don't want to fight. I want us to find a solution that works for everyone. Just know that things will be different going forward. I ended the call before she could argue further, my hands trembling slightly as I set down the phone. For the first time in perhaps decades, I had firmly stood my ground with my daughter. It felt both terrifying and strangely liberating. Whatever happened next, our relationship had fundamentally changed. The question was whether it could be rebuilt on healthier terms, or if this rift would prove permanent. Either way, I couldn't continue enabling behavior that had culminated in my own daughter trying to drug me at a family dinner. I made myself another cup of tea and waited for the storm I knew was coming. I'd barely finished my tea when the doorbell rang, an aggressive, prolonged buzz that could only be Kathleen. Through the peephole, I saw both her and Marcus standing on my porch, her face flushed with anger, his tight with discomfort. This confrontation was coming sooner than I'd expected. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Kathleen. Marcus. I wasn't expecting you. What did you expect after what you just did? Kathleen pushed past me into the foyer, Marcus following with an apologetic glance. Please come in, I said dryly, closing the door. In my living room, Kathleen paced like a caged animal while Marcus perched uncomfortably on the edge of the sofa. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. You can't just cancel our mortgage arrangement without warning, Kathleen began, her voice trembling with rage. We have rights. Actually, I can, I replied calmly, taking a seat in my favorite armchair. The house is legally in my name. You've been making payments to me personally, not to a bank. It's essentially a private arrangement that I can terminate at any time. After everything we've put into that house, she countered. 5 years of payments? 5 years of payments that wouldn't cover half the down payment on a house of that value, I reminded her. 5 years of payments that were frequently late and sometimes had to be requested repeatedly. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor, while I understand you're upset about last night, upset doesn't begin to cover it, Marcus, I interrupted. My own daughter deliberately put something in my drink to make me ill at a family dinner. Can you imagine how that feels? He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. No, I can't. And I'm still processing that myself. But our home. It was just a stupid prank. Kathleen interjected. For God's sake, it was just a little bit of laxative. You weren't going to die. So your defense is that you only wanted to humiliate me, not kill me? I asked incredulously. That's supposed to make it better? You've always been so perfect, so put together. Kathleen spat. The successful businesswoman, the wise investor, Gregory's wonderful mother who can do no wrong. Just once I wanted to see you taken down a peg. The raw honesty of her statement stunned me momentarily. This wasn't just about the house or money. This was deeper, older. Kathleen, Marcus said quietly, this isn't helping. She whirled on him. Whose side are you on? She's threatening to take our home. I'm not threatening to take your home, I clarified. I'm saying our financial arrangement needs to change. You're both successful professionals now. It's time you had a proper mortgage through a bank, building equity and credit in your own names. This is about control. Kathleen accused. You've always needed to control everything. You couldn't stand that I was finally doing well on my own, with my promotion and my beautiful home. Your beautiful home that I bought, I pointed out. That I've subsidized for 5 years while you bought $4,000 dining tables and took luxury vacations. Here we go, she threw up her hands. You never let us forget your generosity. The great Eleanor Bennet, savior of the family. Marcus stood suddenly. Stop it, both of you. This isn't productive. We both turned to him in surprise. Marcus rarely asserted himself in family conflicts. Kathleen, what you did last night was wrong, he said firmly. Drugging anyone's drink is never acceptable, let alone your mother's. And yes, I'm still angry that I ended up drinking it and that you lied to me about it. Kathleen's mouth opened in protest, but he continued. And Eleanor, while I understand your reaction, making major financial decisions in the heat of emotion isn't wise either. We need to take a step back and discuss this rationally. I had to admit, Marcus had a point. What do you suggest then? I think we should meet with a financial advisor and a real estate attorney, together, to discuss options for transferring the house into our names with a fair market value mortgage. We'll pay what the house is worth, no special treatment. Kathleen stared at him. You're actually taking her side? I'm not taking sides, he replied evenly. I'm trying to find a solution that respects everyone. What you did was wrong, Kathleen. And it's not the first time you've been disrespectful to your mother. Oh, so now I'm on trial for being a bad daughter? What about her? Kathleen gestured wildly in my direction. What about how she's always favored Gregory? How she's constantly comparing us? That's not true, I began, but Kathleen was in full flow. Isn't it? Gregory and Pamela saved for their house. Gregory never asks for help. Gregory this, Gregory that. Do you have any idea what it's like living in his shadow? He's always been your favorite. I don't have a favorite, I insisted, though her words struck a nerve. Had I inadvertently created this perception? Bullshit, she spat. You've always been closer to him. Even Dad saw it. The mention of Robert caught me off guard. What are you talking about? Dad told me once that you and Gregory were two peas in a pod. That I was more like him, emotional, creative, less practical. He understood me in a way you never have. Tears pricked at my eyes. Robert and I had discussed our children's different personalities many times, but I never knew he'd had that conversation with Kathleen. Had I really failed to understand my own daughter so completely? The moment of vulnerability passed quickly as Kathleen pressed her advantage. You've held that house over our heads for years, reminding us of your generosity, while making us feel like failures for needing help. That was never my intention, I said quietly. Intentions don't matter, she shot back. It's how you made us feel. Marcus stepped between us. This is exactly what I mean. There are deeper issues here than just the house or what happened last night. We all need time to cool down. The doorbell rang again, interrupting the tense standoff. Through the window, I could see Gregory's car in the driveway. Did you call your brother? I asked Kathleen. No, she looked equally surprised. When I opened the door, Gregory stood there with Pamela beside him, concern etched on both their faces. Mom, Gregory said, embracing me quickly. Tyler told us something strange happened at dinner last night, and then we saw Kathleen and Marcus's car here. Is everything okay? Not really, I admitted, stepping back to let them in. The living room now felt crowded with 5 adults, all tense and unsure. Gregory took in the scene. Kathleen's tear-streaked, angry face, Marcus's uncomfortable posture, my own exhaustion. What's going on? He asked cautiously. Kathleen laughed bitterly. Mom's decided to cancel our mortgage arrangement because I played a stupid prank on her. A prank? Pamela echoed, confused. She put laxatives in Mom's drink last night, Marcus explained tersely. I ended up drinking it instead. Gregory's eyes widened. You did what? Oh, here comes St. Gregory to judge me, Kathleen snapped. Perfect son to the rescue. I'm not judging, Gregory said, though his expression suggested otherwise. I'm trying to understand what's happening. For the next 20 minutes, the story unfolded from multiple perspectives: mine, Kathleen's, Marcus's. Gregory and Pamela listened in stunned silence. So now she's threatening to take our house, Kathleen concluded. I'm not threatening anything, I corrected wearily. I'm saying the financial arrangement needs to change. You can't expect to drug me at dinner and have everything continue as normal. Gregory ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's that it made my heart ache. Kathleen, what were you thinking? Don't you start, she warned. I'm serious. Mom has done nothing but support you. The house, the reduced interest rate, the no down payment. Of course you'd see it that way, Kathleen interrupted. Golden boy Gregory, who never needed help, who did everything right. We needed help too. Gregory's composure finally cracked. Do you think it was easy for us buying our starter home? We struggled for years in that tiny place while you were living in a colonial because Mom helped you. Gregory, Pamela placed a calming hand on his arm. That's not helping. The room fell silent. Years of unspoken resentments now laid bare. Marcus cleared his throat. I think what we need here is a mediator, he suggested. Someone impartial who can help us work through both the emotional and financial aspects of this situation. It was a sensible suggestion, perhaps the first sensible thing anyone had said all day. I agree, I said quietly. This isn't just about the house anymore. Kathleen looked between us, seemingly deflated as her anger gave way to exhaustion. Fine. Whatever. I know a family therapist through work, Pamela offered tentatively, and we have a good financial advisor who could help with the house situation. A tentative plan began to form. We would meet with a therapist to address the family dynamics, and separately with a financial advisor to discuss options for the house. In the meantime, I agreed not to make any more unilateral decisions about the property, and Kathleen reluctantly apologized for the prank, though I sensed it was more to appease the room than genuine remorse. As they prepared to leave, Kathleen pulled me aside in the hallway, her voice low and intense. This isn't over, Mom. You've made your point about the house, but don't think this changes anything between us. Looking into my daughter's eyes, I saw not just anger but hurt, deep, long-standing hurt that wouldn't be resolved with one conversation or even several. You're right, I replied sadly. This isn't over. But whatever happens next, things will be different. She left without another word, Marcus following with an apologetic backward glance. Gregory and Pamela lingered, offering comfort and support, but eventually they too departed, leaving me alone in my suddenly quiet house. The confrontation had escalated beyond the immediate issues of the drug drink and the mortgage payments. Years of family dynamics, perceived favoritism, and unresolved tensions had burst to the surface. The path forward would be difficult, requiring both firm boundaries and compassionate understanding. As I closed my front door, I felt both drained and strangely relieved. For better or worse, we had begun to address truths long buried beneath the surface of our family's polite interactions. The question now was whether we could build something healthier from the wreckage of old patterns and resentments. The week following our confrontation passed in a strange, tense silence. No calls from Kathleen, no texts, not even an angry email. Gregory checked in daily, concerned about the emotional toll the situation was taking on me, but I assured him I was fine. Better than fine in some ways. There was a certain liberation in having everything out in the open after years of walking on eggshells around Kathleen's sensitivities. On Wednesday morning, I met with my lawyer Judith Abernathy, who had handled my affairs since Robert's death. So let me get this straight, Judith said, peering at me over her reading glasses. You purchased a home for your daughter and son-in-law 5 years ago. They've been making payments directly to you rather than through a bank, and now you want to transfer ownership to them following a personal disagreement? That's the simplified version, yes, I confirmed, omitting the details about the laxative incident. Some things were too embarrassing to share, even with my trusted attorney. Judith tapped her pen thoughtfully against her legal pad. The property has appreciated considerably since you purchased it. Current market value is approximately 40% higher than your purchase price. I'm aware. If you transfer ownership at current market value, they'll need to secure a substantial mortgage. Given interest rates now compared to 5 years ago, their monthly payments would likely double. I hadn't considered that. What are my options? For the next hour, Judith outlined various possibilities. Selling at the original purchase price, essentially gifting them the appreciation. Selling at market value with a private loan at below market interest, creating a rent-to-own agreement, or simply continuing the current arrangement with more formal documentation. Take some time to think about it, Judith advised as our meeting concluded. This is both a financial and a family decision. Don't rush into anything. I left her office with a folder full of options but no clear path forward. What did I really want from this situation? To punish Kathleen? To teach her responsibility? Or simply to disentangle our financial relationship so that resentment couldn't continue to fester? Lost in thought, I almost missed the familiar figure waiting beside my car in the parking garage. Marcus, I said in surprise. What are you doing here? My son-in-law straightened from where he'd been leaning against a concrete pillar. He looked tired, the strain of the past week evident in the shadows beneath his eyes. I asked Gregory where you might be, he admitted. I hope you don't mind. I thought we should talk, just the two of us. We found a quiet cafe near the lawyer's office, ordering coffee in awkward silence before Marcus finally spoke. I want to apologize, he began, for not being more aware of what was happening at dinner that night. And for not standing up more firmly afterward. You have nothing to apologize for, Marcus. You were as much a victim as I was. He shook his head. Still, I should have seen the signs earlier. Kathleen has been different lately. More bitter, more resentful. I attributed it to stress from her promotion, but it's deeper than that. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, drawing comfort from its warmth. How are things between you two? Tense, he admitted. We've barely spoken all week. She's sleeping in the guest room. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. This isn't your fault, Eleanor. He met my eyes directly. What Kathleen did was wrong, and her reaction afterward was worse. I've told her as much. His frankness surprised me. Marcus had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over when Kathleen and I clashed. The thing is, he continued, there's something you should know. Something Kathleen hasn't been honest about, with you or with me. My stomach tightened. What is it? She's been telling me for years that all our financial struggles were because of the mortgage payments to you. That they were so high we could barely make ends meet, even with both our salaries. The payments were half what you'd pay with a bank mortgage, I said, confused. Exactly. Marcus took a deep breath. Last week, after everything blew up, I decided to look at our finances myself. Kathleen has always handled that side of things. What I found, Eleanor, the payments to you haven't been our problem. Kathleen has been spending enormous amounts on clothes, jewelry, spa trips, tens of thousands of dollars that I knew nothing about. The revelation stunned me. How is that possible? Wouldn't you notice? She has a separate credit card I didn't know about. And she's been skimming from our joint account, transferring money to a private account in her name. His voice cracked slightly. She's been lying to me for years, Eleanor. Making me think we were struggling because of your mortgage arrangement, when really she's been living a secret double life financially. I sat back, processing this information. It explained so much of Kathleen's defensiveness about money, her anger when I suggested a formal mortgage, her increasing resentment toward me. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I'm the one who should be sorry. I believed her when she painted you as this controlling, money-obsessed mother. I let her manipulate me, and by extension, I let her manipulate you. We sat in silence for a moment, the implications of his discovery settling between us. What are you going to do? I finally asked. He sighed heavily. I don't know. We need counseling, obviously. Whether it's enough to save our marriage remains to be seen. And the house. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. Marcus straightened, his expression resolute. I want to buy the house from you properly. Market value, bank mortgage, everything above board. But I want it in my name only, at least for now. Given what I've learned about Kathleen's financial behavior, I don't think it would be wise to have her on the mortgage. The request surprised me. That's a significant step, Marcus. Are you sure? I'm sure that I need to establish some financial boundaries with my wife, he said firmly. Just as you needed to establish boundaries with your daughter. As we parted ways, Marcus hugged me, something he'd never done before without Kathleen present. "We'll figure this out," he promised. "All of us." Driving home, I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness for the pain Marcus was experiencing, vindication that my concerns about Kathleen's attitude toward money hadn't been unfounded, and a cautious hope that perhaps this crisis might ultimately lead to healthier relationships all around. 2 days later, Pamela called to tell me she'd arranged a family meeting with Dr. Harriet Wilson, the therapist she'd mentioned. We would meet at Dr. Wilson's office on Saturday morning, neutral territory where, hopefully, we could begin to address the deeper issues underlying our recent conflicts. I spent Friday preparing myself emotionally, reflecting on my own contributions to the family dynamics. Had I unconsciously favored Gregory? Had my attempts to help Kathleen financially inadvertently undermined her sense of capability? These were uncomfortable questions, but necessary ones if we were to move forward. Saturday dawned clear and cool, a perfect autumn day. I dressed carefully in a blue sweater Robert had always liked, wanting to feel his presence with me somehow. He had always been better at navigating family conflicts than I was. Dr. Wilson's office was warm and inviting, with comfortable seating arranged in a circle. I arrived first, followed shortly by Gregory and Pamela, then Marcus and finally Kathleen, who entered with reluctance evident in every line of her body. "Thank you all for coming," Dr. Wilson began after introductions. "Before we start, I want to establish that this is a safe space. Everyone will have a chance to speak and be heard without interruption. We're not here to assign blame, but to understand each other better and find a path forward." For the next 2 hours, we took turns sharing our perspectives. I spoke of my intentions in helping Kathleen and Marcus purchase their home, my hurt at the dinner incident, and my realization that our financial entanglement had become toxic. Gregory expressed his frustration at being cast as the perfect son when he had struggled in his own ways, and his sadness at the rift between his sister and mother. Marcus bravely shared his discovery about Kathleen's financial deceptions, though he did so gently, focusing on his feelings of betrayal rather than attacking her character. When Kathleen's turn came, she sat silent for a long moment before speaking. "I've always felt like I wasn't enough," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not smart enough, not responsible enough, not successful enough. Especially compared to Gregory." "Kathleen, that's not," I began, but Dr. Wilson gently raised a hand to remind me not to interrupt. "In my mind," Kathleen continued, "Mom's financial help wasn't generosity. It was control. Proof that I couldn't do it on my own. And yes, I resented it, even while I accepted it. I resented needing it." She paused, wiping away a tear. "What I did at dinner was childish and wrong. I was angry about the suggestion to transfer the mortgage to a bank, which felt like just another criticism. I wanted to make Mom uncomfortable, to take her down a notch. I never thought about how it would affect anyone else, or how it would look to my own children." Her honesty, however painful, was the first genuine communication we'd had in years. "As for the money," she glanced apologetically at Marcus, "that's something Marcus and I need to work through privately. But yes, I've been dishonest with him and with myself." By the end of the session, we hadn't resolved everything, but we had made a start. Dr. Wilson suggested individual sessions for Kathleen to address her self-worth issues, couples therapy for her and Marcus, and periodic family sessions to continue improving our communication. As we prepared to leave, I approached Kathleen hesitantly. "I've been meeting with my lawyer about the house," I told her. "I'd like to propose a solution, if you and Marcus are willing to hear it." She nodded cautiously. "I'll transfer the house to both your names, at the original purchase price rather than current market value. You'll get a proper mortgage through a bank, building your credit and equity legally. But there will be conditions attached to the transfer: financial counseling for both of you, and an agreement about how decisions regarding the house will be made." Kathleen and Marcus exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "We need to discuss it," Marcus said finally. "But it sounds like a fair starting point." It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a beginning. As we left Dr. Wilson's office, walking together into the bright autumn day, I felt something I hadn't expected. A tentative hope that from this painful episode, a healthier family dynamic might eventually emerge. The path would be long and undoubtedly difficult, but for the first time in years, we were at least facing in the same direction. 6 months can change so much, yet somehow not enough. As I parked in front of Kathleen and Marcus's home, officially their home now, with the deed transferred and a proper mortgage in place, I found myself reflecting on the journey we'd taken since that fateful dinner. The Colonial looked the same from the outside, its elegant lines and manicured lawn a picture of suburban success. But inside I knew much had changed. Just as much had changed within each of us. Today marked the first full family dinner since the incident. A deliberate choice, symbolically reclaiming what had been tainted by hurt and betrayal half a year ago. My hands trembled slightly as I gathered the bouquet of daisies I'd brought, Kathleen's favorite since childhood, and made my way to the front door. Gregory's car was already in the driveway. Always punctual, my son. Some things never change, even as everything else does. Marcus opened the door before I could ring the bell, his warm smile a welcome sight. "Eleanor, come in," he said, accepting my coat. "Everyone's in the living room." The changes in Marcus over these months had been remarkable. After the initial shock of discovering Kathleen's financial deceptions, he had stepped into a strength I hadn't known he possessed. Their marriage had teetered on the brink of collapse, but through intensive counseling and brutally honest conversations, they were slowly rebuilding on a foundation of truth rather than illusion. In the living room, Gregory and Pamela sat with their children, who immediately rushed to embrace me. Kathleen stood by the fireplace, a glass of water in her hand. No wine today, another change. She discovered during therapy that alcohol amplified her resentments and impulses, and had chosen to abstain while doing her emotional work. "Mom," she greeted me, accepting the daisies with a genuine smile. "These are beautiful." "Thank you." The formality between us still existed, a necessary boundary as we rebuilt trust. But there was warmth there too, fragile but real. The transfer of the house had been completed 3 months ago, after numerous meetings with lawyers, financial advisors, and therapists. The conditions I'd attached were simple but firm. Financial counseling for both Kathleen and Marcus, separate accounts with clear agreements about spending, and a legal provision that the house couldn't be refinanced or sold without mutual consent. Marcus had initially wanted the mortgage in his name only, but Kathleen's progress in therapy had convinced him, and me to include her, with safeguards in place. It was an act of conditional trust, acknowledging both her issues and her efforts to address them. Dinner was served in the same dining room where our family had fractured, but the expensive table had been replaced with a more modest one. Another symbolic change, Kathleen letting go of material displays of success in favor of financial stability. "I'd like to propose a toast," Marcus said once we were all seated, "to new beginnings and hard-earned wisdom." We raised our glasses, water for Kathleen, sparkling cider for the children, wine for the rest of us, in a moment of unity that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. As we ate, conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected. We carefully avoided certain topics, of course, the wounds were still healing, but there was laughter too, genuine moments of connection that reminded me of happier times. After dinner, while Gregory and Marcus took the children outside to play, Kathleen and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher in companionable silence. "I want you to know," she said finally, not looking at me, "that I'm still working through things in therapy. My issues with you, with feeling inadequate with money, they didn't develop overnight, and they won't be resolved overnight either." "I understand," I replied softly. "I'm doing my own work too." This was true. Dr. Wilson had gently but firmly pointed out patterns in my parenting that had contributed to our family dynamics. My tendency to rescue rather than empower, my unconscious comparisons between my children, my difficulty expressing emotions directly. "But I am grateful," Kathleen continued, finally meeting my eyes, "for your willingness to try again. For not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." The words touched something deep within me. "You're my daughter, Kathleen. That doesn't change, even when things between us are difficult." "I'm sorry about the drink," she said, her voice barely audible. "It was cruel and childish. I wanted to hurt you because I was hurting, and that's no excuse." "Thank you for saying that," I acknowledged, accepting the apology that had been long in coming. "We both made mistakes. The important thing is that we're learning from them." Later, as the evening drew to a close, I found myself on the back patio with Marcus. The spring air was cool but pleasant, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "It's been a hell of a 6 months," he remarked, hands in his pockets as he gazed upward. "That it has," I agreed. "How are things really, Marcus?" "Beyond the polite version." He considered this thoughtfully. "Challenging. Revealing. Sometimes painful. But ultimately better. There's an honesty between Kathleen and me now that wasn't there before. We're seeing each other clearly, maybe for the first time. And financially? The budget counseling has been transformative. Kathleen's working through her emotional spending, understanding what she was trying to fill with material things." He smiled wryly. "Our bank account is certainly healthier, even with the mortgage payments being higher now." When it was time to leave, Kathleen walked me to my car. The night air had grown chilly, and she wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself. "This was nice," she said simply. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for having me," I replied. Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Robert would be proud of you, you know, for doing the hard work of facing yourself. That takes real courage." Tears glistened in her eyes at the mention of her father. "I hope so. I know so." I squeezed her hand gently before getting into my car. Driving home, I reflected on the lessons these difficult months had taught me. About boundaries and how they protect relationships rather than damaging them. About the danger of financial entanglements with family, and how help without accountability can become harm. About the courage it takes to confront painful truths, and the healing that can only begin once they're acknowledged. Most of all, I'd learned that standing up for myself didn't mean losing my daughter. It meant creating the possibility of a healthier relationship with her. One based on mutual respect rather than dependence and resentment. The road ahead would still have its challenges. Trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly. Old patterns can resurface in moments of stress. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about our family's future. That night, as I settled into bed, I found myself speaking aloud to Robert, as I often did in private moments. "We're healing, my love. Slowly, imperfectly, but we're healing. Our daughter is finding her way back to herself, and to me. Not the way we would have wanted, certainly not through the pain and conflict we experienced, but the destination matters more than the path." In the quiet darkness of my bedroom, I could almost feel his presence, his quiet wisdom that had anchored our family for so many years. "You always said that love isn't just tender feelings. It's having the courage to set boundaries, to demand respect, to let people face the consequences of their actions. I finally understood what you meant." As I drifted toward sleep, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey wasn't over in many ways, it was just beginning. But we were moving forward with greater awareness, greater honesty, and greater courage than before. And in the end, perhaps that's all we can ask of ourselves and those we love. Not perfection but progress. Not instant healing but the willingness to begin. What about you? Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with someone you love? Or experienced a moment when a family conflict led to unexpected growth? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Remember, even the most painful family challenges can become opportunities for transformation when we face them with courage and compassion. Thank you for listening to my story, and may your own family journeys, however complicated, lead you toward greater understanding and peace.